Is Canada literally falling apart? On April 29th, Alberta Premier Daniel Smith introduced Bill 54, the Election Statutes Amendment Act, lowering the signature threshold for citizen-initiated referendums to 10% of the previous election's turnout. This equals about 175,000 signatures. This process makes it easier to trigger a vote on secession, although Smith insists her government isn't pushing for it. The move follows tensions with the federal government, especially after the Liberal victory under Mark Carney, who has specifically targeted Alberta's oil and gas sector through emission caps and the No More Pipelines Act. Now, for the more complex issue, is secession legally possible under Canada's Constitution? In short, the answer is yes. As clarified by the 1998 Supreme Court reference, RE Secession of Quebec, it said a province can negotiate a secession if a clear majority votes for it on a clear question in a referendum, triggering a duty for the rest of Canada to negotiate in good faith. The Clarity Act of 2000 formalized this, leaving it to Parliament to decide what clear means. So yes, Alberta could legally pursue secession if it jumps through those hoops: referendum, majority, negotiations. It's not necessarily a simple process, but the path exists. Bill 54 simply lowered the hurdle for the first step. So this got me wondering, what happens to Canada's economy if Alberta actually leaves? And it's not pretty. Alberta contributes 15 to 17% of Canada's $2.9 trillion GDP, so between $400 to $500 billion annually. Now, this doesn't translate to an equivalent GDP loss because of trade substitutions and economic adaptation, though it would cut national GDP by approximately 6.6%, significantly worse than the 2008 recession, which saw a 2.8% contraction. Alberta's net federal contribution is also quite massive. Around $25 billion annually goes out of Alberta into other provinces. Without it, the rest of Canada would be looking at higher taxes or cutting social services to cover the shortfall. Energy would also be a big issue for the rest of Canada. Alberta produces 3.4 million barrels of oil every day, supplying most of Canada's crude. Post-secession, Canada would import oil from Alberta or abroad at higher costs, spiking energy prices across the country, particularly in Ontario and Quebec. Trade disruptions and pipeline disputes would also cost billions. Supply chains for food, goods, and energy would grind to a halt as borders and tariffs have to get hashed out. Job losses would reach hundreds of thousands, and the Canadian dollar would continue to fall apart, driving inflation. Recovery would take years, leaving Canada economically weaker and energy dependent. In other words, Alberta's exit would devastate Canada's economy. So Alberta's secession is legally feasible, though economically catastrophic for Canada. But what about public sentiment? On April 6th, an Angus Reid poll showed that 30% of Alberta would support separation in a referendum. Now, keep in mind this was before the election. For reference, in the 2025 federal election, the Conservatives won 34 out of Alberta's 37 seats, while the Liberals secured just 2 seats. So it's fair to assume that the 30% has increased significantly. What's crazy is that 33% of Saskatchewan also supports secession. And in the 2025 federal election, the Conservative Party won 13 of their 14 seats. So if the first domino falls, the second won't be far behind.